Bella's isolation wasn't born from fear, it was forged by centuries of disillusionment. She wasn't like vampires. Not entirely. She was older, something closer to the primordial forces of nature, born from magic, forged by fire. She had walked the earth long before mortals or immortals kept records. She had seen empires rise and fall, watched humanity repeat its mistakes over and over again, and she had grown tired of it all. So, she chose isolation, hiding herself away in the far reaches of the world where the weight of existence felt less suffocating. The rare times she ventured out, it was to correct some imbalance, a threat she couldn't ignore, or a favor for the few beings she once called allies. Her life of solitude might have stretched on indefinitely if not for Rosalie. Bella found her by chance, though she often wondered if it was fate. She had been wandering through a dense snow-covered forest when she heard the faint sounds of struggle, a heartbeat too fast, the smell of blood too fresh. Curiosity piqued. Bella followed the trail until she found Rosalie, newly turned, drenched in crimson, her golden hair wild and matted as she stumbled through the trees. Bella's first instinct was to walk away. Vampires were predictable, driven by hunger and arrogance, and she had no patience for either. But there was something in Rosalie's eyes that gave her pause, a fire, a fury, a refusal to crumble even as her world fell apart. Against her better judgment, Bella stayed. "You're not going to survive out here," Bella said bluntly, stepping out from the shadows. Her voice was calm, almost bored, but her presence carried the weight of someone who had nothing to fear. Rosalie whipped around, her golden eyes blazing. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice shaking with both anger and desperation. Bella tilted her head, studying her. "That's not important," she replied. "What's important is whether you want to live." Rosalie's defiance faltered, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty. She nodded hesitantly, and Bella sighed, motioning for her to follow. "Then come with me. I'll teach you what you need to know." For weeks, Bella kept her distance, offering guidance without attachment. She taught Rosalie how to control her thirst, how to move through the shadows unseen, how to survive without drawing attention. Rosalie resented her at first, her cold demeanor, her cryptic answers, the way she seemed entirely unaffected by the chaos of Rosalie's new reality. But slowly, Rosalie began to see the cracks in Bella's armor, the way her eyes softened when she thought no one was looking, the quiet care in the advice she gave, the way she always stayed close enough to intervene if Rosalie faltered. One night, as they sat by a fire Bella had built in the ruins of an old stone house, Rosalie finally asked the question that had been burning in her mind. "Why do you help me?" she said, her voice quieter than usual. Bella didn't look at her, her gaze fixed on the flames. "You remind me of someone I failed to save," she admitted after a long pause. "Someone I cared about." Rosalie blinked, caught off guard by the rare glimpse into Bella's guarded past. "Who?" Bella shook her head, the ghost of a sad smile crossing her lips. "It doesn't matter. What matters is that you survive." That moment marked a shift in their relationship. Rosalie began to see Bella not just as an ancient, untouchable protector, but as someone carrying centuries of grief and guilt. She started asking questions about Bella's past, her powers, her isolation. Bella resisted at first, deflecting or shutting down the conversation entirely, but Rosalie's persistence eventually wore her down. Over time, Bella began to open up, sharing fragments of her history, how she had been created as a guardian of balance, how she had outlived every bond she had ever formed, how she had grown weary of a world that only seemed to destroy itself. "It's easier to be alone," Bella said one night, her voice heavy with resignation. "You can't lose what you don't have." Rosalie, sitting closer to Bella than she ever had before, looked at her with something like defiance. "That's not living," she said softly. "That's just existing." Bella didn't respond, but her silence spoke volumes. For the first time in centuries, someone had challenged her solitude, not with force, but with quiet conviction. Their bond deepened slowly, in ways neither of them fully understood. Bella found herself drawn to Rosalie's fire, her stubborn refusal to back down even when the odds were stacked against her. Rosalie, in turn, was captivated by Bella's strength, her quiet wisdom, and the glimpses of vulnerability she let slip when she thought no one was watching. It wasn't until an unexpected confrontation that the truth of their connection became clear. A rogue vampire, drawn to Bella's power, had tracked them down, demanding a fight. Bella, always one to avoid unnecessary conflict, tried to de-escalate the situation, but when the vampire lunged at Rosalie, Bella's reaction was instant and feral. She unleashed a power Rosalie had never seen before, ancient, raw, and terrifyingly beautiful. The rogue was destroyed within moments, but the aftermath left Rosalie shaken. "You're different," Rosalie said as Bella stood over the smoldering remains, her expression unreadable. "I told you that from the beginning," Bella replied, but her voice was quieter now, almost hesitant. Rosalie stepped closer, her heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with fear. "No," she said, shaking her head. "This is different. When he came for me, it was like you couldn't control it. Like you had to protect me." Bella turned to her, her eyes shadowed with a vulnerability Rosalie had never seen before. "I couldn't let him hurt you," she said simply. "I don't know why, but I couldn't." It clicked then, the realization hitting them both at the same time. "Mates," Rosalie whispered, her voice barely audible. Bella didn't deny it, her silence confirmation enough. From that moment on, their bond became undeniable. Bella's protectiveness over Rosalie intensified, but it was no longer rooted in guilt or duty, it was love. Fierce and unyielding, Rosalie in turn became Bella's anchor, her reminder that even the oldest, most broken souls could find something worth living for. But Bella's instinct for isolation didn't vanish entirely. "Why do you still pull away?" Rosalie asked one night, her head resting on Bella's shoulder as they watched the stars. "Because the more you care, the more you have to lose," Bella admitted, her voice heavy with the weight of centuries of loss. Rosalie turned to her, her gaze steady. "Then stop running," she said softly. "You're not alone anymore. Let me carry some of it with you." Bella looked at her, and for the first time, she let herself believe it. Together, they could face whatever came next. For Bella, Rosalie wasn't just a mate, she was proof that even after centuries of solitude, there was still something worth fighting for.